Good evening. I'd like to call to order the committee meeting of the Waste Diversions. I'd like to start out, if we could, just with a word of prayer. Reverend Coakley, if you would, please.
We bow our heads. Merciful God, our Father, we thank you for the blessing of this day. We thank you for the privilege now to come together that we might do deliberation for the Solid Waste Authority and for the citizens of Horry County. We pray your blessings upon us that we might do your will. It's in Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. If you would, please stand and face the flag. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Solid Waste Authority. And I think probably the easiest way to do this, because if I try to do it, I know I'm going to mess it up, is we'll just start here and let everyone introduce themselves as we go around the room, please.
Brian Gilhooly from Repower South, Chief Operating Officer.
Hi, I'm Jim Bolig from Repower South.
Justin Converse from Repower South.
I'm Bob Shepard from Repower South.
Scott Montgomery, Repower.
I'm Scott Brandon with the Brandon Agency, helping with PR and marketing for Repower South.
Well, I believe we're outnumbered. There's more of them than there's us, but I ain't sure. But again, would like to welcome you here. It was quite an interesting trip to see your product and to see it working. It was quite an educational day. Danny Knight and I in particular have traveled pretty much the United States looking at magic boxes. And we have seen everything from a 55-gallon drum in a garage to y'all. And there's a lot of stuff in the middle between them two. I promise you there is. But this is exciting, and it does look quite promising. And what I'm going to do now is turn the meeting over to y'all.
Fantastic. Well,
and speak in, just be sure to speak into your mics. We're recording it, and as we do all of our meetings. So,
And those of you on the end, if you would use the portable mic as you speak, please.
Well, I can take it.
Go ahead.
Well, the way that we had first organized the meeting, we talked to Mike about going through some Q&A from you guys about what you experienced, what specifically you all had questions about, both economically, how we would be able to structure something moving forward. Obviously, you've seen the fuel, you've seen it in a test situation, but then actually, how obviously all of the repower, plants would be different depending on where they would be placed. And since you guys already have some existing facilities, I think there were questions about that. There's questions about, what are the economics as it relates to your tipping fee versus the way other, areas might handle their waste. So I think we came in with the expectation to let you guys really just ask us a broad range of questions, and we would be prepared to answer them, or in the event that we don't have the answers, we would come back to you, after having the opportunity to put pen to paper, that kind of thing.
Sure. Well, I think my first question would be, we heard what you anticipated the test to come out that we were down there. I'd like to know if they came out as you anticipated.
Well, there are always a lot of frameworks that you create when you do something like this to try to figure out what the results of it. But we were largely, you have to understand, we have largely done extensive pre-testing before a couple of weeks ago, and so last week was less of a if you will, of a test, and from my standpoint, more of a demonstration at full scale. To see that this product, when we scaled it up at 100 megawatts, because that was the size of the Canada's unit, it was about 100 megawatts, that scaled up at that level, that it would perform consistent with what we had previously learned from the extensive testing that we had done. So let's go back first to what our expectations were before we did the test. We have, as you know, been working on this product for, well, I've actually been working on it for close to 8 to 10 years. And my point of view was that, and you'll have to understand that I'm the founder of Recommunity Holdings, which is the largest recycling business in North America. So I've been deeply involved in solid waste, as Bob Shepard has been as well, for 25 years, and in the last 10 years deeply involved in recycling and promoting recycling. And my biggest worry 10 years ago was that even if we got every residential home to recycle, which is really hard, and you almost need to put a single stream system in, and then you've got to rely upon the residential participation, that you can still only touch about 30% of the waste stream. And so you got a huge cost. It's hard to get participation. And at the end of the day, even if you have a perfect residential system, you still have vast amounts of waste in the commercial system. And I think Horry County is a great example of, with the huge tourist group, group of people that come here every year. It's hard to get their attention to do much recycling. They're here to have fun and do other things than that. So this is a problem that faces the whole country. It's not a problem unique to Horry County. And the real problem and the challenge is that if we're going to build a sustainable future, we have to find a way to actually pull more of those recyclables out of the entire waste stream, not just the residential waste stream, but the commercial waste stream. And then the problem that the whole country has found is that they probably can figure out a way to do that, but the balance of the waste that is not recyclable in traditional markets has no place to go. So what happens is that it ends up destroying, from an economic standpoint, the economic model, because if you take your $30 that you get paid for your tip fee, or $28, and you spend it to process the waste, and then you still got to put all that waste back in the landfill, you've kind of gone backwards. And so the whole early concept really rests upon, could we build an approach that would use that balance of that waste stream? And so we've been working on that for 5 to 8 years, and in the last 2 or 3 years done a lot of testing against the concept that we could build an engineered fuel made up of the fibers and the polymers, the non-recyclable polymers and fibers, that was customized to actually be a coal substitution product for the coal-fired industry. And our personal belief, and I'm sure that you guys have your own perspectives on this, but I've been in the power industry for many, many years, and I believe coal is going to be here for a long, long time. We're going to end up with utilities who are going to diversify. They're going to have coal, they're going to have gas, they're going to have nuclear. But coal is not going to disappear, and so if we could build a engineered fuel that could be used as a substitution fuel, and at the same time for coal, at the same time reduce the overall emissions, this would be a powerful tool to allow communities and the utilities, which often are in partnership with the communities because they're some of their biggest customers, to actually help drive to zero waste, reduce the overall emissions at coal plant, reduce the use of coal, and ultimately achieve much higher recycling. So that was the early goals. There is no doubt that the ability to increase recycling is very clear and very evident. And so the real issue was, could we take that non-recyclable fiber and polymers, could we take it apart, blend it with a sorbent, which is part of the technology, and then build that into an engineered fuel. And so over here on this sack at the end of the table is actually waste that was created to do the test. But we've been doing these tests actually at Western Wyoming Research Institute for about 2.5 years. And so we had high expectations that we could produce an energy substitution product, but at the same time we could cause the sorbents that are inside the fuel to actually cause the performance inside the coal boiler to greatly improve. So we have seen in excess of 70% total emission reduction. So if we do a 10%, 10 to 15% energy substitution, and for coal, which means we burn less coal, but some of this fuel, we're able to see the entire emission of the power plant reduced by 60 to 80%. So that's a pretty powerful result. And but you always have those who then say, well, okay, you did it in a pilot plant, but does it really scale up and does it really work? So I think one of the most important things wasn't so much, I think we were not doubtful of what the results, but we wanted to be able to show to other people. That's why we invited a bunch of folks to the demonstration tests to see that at a full scale that you could actually run this in a full-scale boiler and get the same results. The really good news about a couple of weeks ago is that actually the results of Wyoming have been very, very good. The results last week were even better. So we ended up with a 7-day performance run. It ran Monday through Saturday. We consumed, I think, slightly over 350 tons of fuel. We burned at a maximum rate of about 15%, not entire every hour, but that was part of the test. And we saw aggregated total emission reductions for mercury of 62%, for HCl of, I think, something in the 70s, and SO2 is 78%. So we knew that we would get those kind of, but it's always really nice to do it at full scale and have the results follow the predictive pattern of the research. So last week, I think the factors that were demonstrated was the ability to relatively easily tie this into a large-scale utility plant, for the utility operators to feel comfortable that they could use this product like they use coal, that we could get the kind of results that we got. And then, of course, we did a whole set of instrumentation and continuous air emission monitoring that will come out as part of a report. It probably, won't be available for another 4 or 5 weeks, but that will largely. But you have to understand all these plants operate with continuous air emission monitors, so they know exactly what they're doing every second. So we have a large confidence level of exactly what the results are already. But when they do their annual test each year, they hired third-party contractors, and they do it in accordance with the EPA protocols. So those people were all there, and they will take 30 days to kind of gather the data and make sure it followed the procedures and so forth. So a long answer to it was very
Very short question.
I'm glad.
How was the test?
Yes,
It was good.
Yes, would have sufficed.
Yeah, I'm not going to ask him anything else. I promise you that.
Yeah, the only thing that the temporary feed was a little bit of a problem, but we were happy that it occurred because now, permanent engineering will go into. Jim met with some folks last night, and feeding it, we wanted to make sure it burned, and it burned, and it did all the emission control reductions and more that were expected. And they also got real world experience under commercial standards, and now they think that they've got the risk out of the delivery system as well, which is silage and how the fuel flow and pneumatics and transportation would occur. And so our takeaways are that it did everything we had hoped and more, would be my answer to the question.
Well, how did SCANA respond to the initial? What was their initial?
Well, I think there were responses at 3 or 4 different levels. First, from my standpoint, the most important thing is that were the plant operators comfortable with the fuel, and could they control their plant? And because at the end of the day, they're going to kind of feed up their point of view. So the plant manager, I don't know if you met Kevin, but I think Kevin and his operators are very, very pleased. They've done some other testing there, so they've had some experience with other biofuels, and I don't think they knew what to expect actually, but what they experienced was much, much improved over anything that they'd ever done before. I think on behalf of SCANA, at the highest levels of the company, they've hired some third parties to kind of witness the test, give them some independence, and we've got this, I think, the strongest sense from them that they're very, very pleased, and I think it was evident. I'm not sure. I can't remember which day you guys were there, but SCANA both days actually. Charles McFadden and then Jim Landry actually kind of, took over a little bit of the presentation and talked about their confidences. So I think they probably do a better job of speaking for themselves than I do. But SCANA was very happy, I think, very pleased.
The contractors that they had contracted with, their results will be in 30 days, you say, from what
SCANA already
people
has
they had
theirs.
contracted to come in, the third party.
Yeah, well, the MPH, the firm that we're licensees, we have a franchise, which is 9 states that we're developing, and there's a franchisor that sits above that owns all this technology and all the patents. They've brought in a third-party verification of everything. SCANA did as well, brought in another company to verify, and SCANA's already gotten inputs back from their combustion engineers, both internally and third-party, that there was no combustion issues, there was no combustion failures, there was nothing was out of whack. They were just, their third-party presence was additional insurance to make sure that nothing that had been overlooked, and so they monitored the entire test, and then they gave them feedback that was very positive afterwards. And we'll have access to that when the franchisor delivers the final reports and so on and so forth. And it should be the next few weeks that we get that. But the company measuring at ICT, y'all met Richard Storm.
Right.
Many of those metrics have already been provided to all the constituents involved, and they were very, very good.
And you have them in a couple, 2 or 3 weeks, and of course you'll share them with us. I'm
Be happy to share them.
Well, you'll get a copy of everything, but it's a formal report that's going to be represented to the whole world, and so it's going to be a very substantial document. This is the first commercial, we call it demonstration, but under load, under normal operating conditions, running a power plant, and so that is a validation of the technology, and so they're going to fully document it and doing it with independent third-party folks, and so that the perspective can never be questioned, because they spent a tremendous amount of money to do what they did.
Is the discussion with Santee Cooper going well?
I would refer that to Doug, and all I would say is we invited we know Santee Cooper fairly well. Y'all obviously know him very, very well. SCANA has helped us develop this technology. 2.5 years ago, SCANA became our partners. They became our equity partner last month. They have an appetite, and so before we wanted to go to Santee Cooper, you can't go to folks like that and not be able to deliver. And if SCANA said that our appetite is this big, then it would take several projects to be able to meet their appetite. And so we've presented to Santee Cooper at the project level. We've talked with their buyers, and we've said this is coming, but we haven't gone down and pitched yet because.
My question is, if they don't come on board, is the distance going to preclude us from
No, sir. It will
moving
not.
forward?
No, sir. I would answer that by saying that Horry County would be a primary target for us regardless, because if SCANA comes up with a large appetite, 10%, they're going to be about 550,000 tons. At 15%, they'll be larger. And so each project, and Jim can speak to it, but represents 150 to 170,000 tons. Is that?
Well, the incoming waste stream is about 250,000 tons, 250 to 300, and that would produce a engineered feedstock of about 150,000 tons.
So that's all the fuel you'd have, and so the worst thing we could do is go have a big pitch to Santee Cooper about what we can do for Wynya and what we can do for Cross, and then have SCANA say, hey fellas.
Well, don't get me wrong. If they don't come in and we like it, I really don't care where it goes.
Yes, sir.
Right.
As long as it goes and we're a partner in some form of fashion, and we'll get through some of the rest of that stuff. But
yes, sir.
I mean,
In a perfect world, we want it to go to Santee because they serve y'all. This is Santee Cooper country. They employ folks in these counties, and frankly, it saves us money. you know, we can cut y'all a better deal if we can haul it to Wynyard and Cross rather than pull it to Charleston and to Coke Station. And we know how far Orangeburg is from here. And so
Maybe I do want them in then.
but my point is we desperately, we feel very positive. Doug Smith has had very high level conversations with Santee Cooper, but to say that we're along with them where we are with Scanner right now would not be informing you correctly. We have not even pitched them. We just wanted to make sure they were aware of the technology.
It took us a long time to get them to buy into the gas system, so we know. Good luck.
Right. Thank you.
Right.
What has been Charleston's? Have you met with them since?
Yes, sir.
What's their attitude? What's been their reply?
To call it like I see it, they've ranged from saying that they don't want to be a guinea pig to very complicated political forces in that community.
Welcome to our world.
Sir?
Welcome to our world.
Yes, sir. I don't say that negatively or positively. I just say that politics can be very complicated everywhere, and they, like many places, they view this as an initial deployment. There's nothing that y'all have seen, whether it's combustion or separation, is new technology.
Yeah.
It's a patent portfolio that assembles them in a way where you can take the combustibles and burn them in a coal-fired power plant. That's where it happens.
Politics,
In fairness,
like a party.
in fairness to the issue of Charleston, we stepped in there when they were right in the middle of trying to continue their single stream program, and you just nailed it. Welcome to our world. That's the world that we're having to deal with, and we'll have to deal with everywhere. But the point there is they wanted to get their property. There was politics more over the property than anybody coming in. They didn't want anything to cloud the issue. They wanted to focus on that, get that done. I think it'll be clear sailing in the next 2 to 3 weeks when they get that property closed.
Well, we were aware of some things that have gone on down there politically and with their recycling situation and whatever. I think the advantage that we have here is that this board can make that decision of what we decide to do. It doesn't have to go anywhere else. So.
Well, you know, I actually think that's a very powerful differentiation between yourself and Charleston, because I think Charleston is got kind of a divided set of voices on the council, and they really are having a hard time. It has nothing to do with even this issue.
That was obvious the day we were down there. If you talked and listened to them, that was fairly obvious.
Many issues they come at it from different perspectives. So, you know, every municipality has their own kind of culture and character, and they have their own way that they do business. And I mean, we're quite interested in building a partnership with Horry County, primarily because we think you guys could be partners, which could be focused, and you could make decisions. So.
Define partnership.
Well, a partnership first recognizes that you want to treat your partner the way you'd want to be treated. So that's the first step. The second step is that it is always characterized by a win-win, which means that you're not trying to find a way to make it lose-win or win-lose, but rather actually trying to create the essence of being in interest of the other person's well-being. And then I think the third leg of that is that a partner isn't just for this week or for this month, but it's someone who's willing to do this long-term and behave this way long-term. So I would say that the three elements of defining a successful partnerships are one, that you get treated the way that you treat someone the way you would want to get treated. Second, you create circumstances in which the parties actually feel that it's a win-win, and sometimes that means give and taking, and it's not always, 49, 51% or whatever, but it is that people sit down and actually bring value to each other.
Kind of like a new marriage.
Like a new marriage. And then like a marriage, it's got only marriages work if you're committed to it long term, right? And so a part of the partnership is being a long-term commitment to each other and to the well-being of each other, because not everything works perfectly every year. So that's how I define partnership.
Can you talk a little bit about how the EPA sees your process?
Yep. There's really, I would tell you that there's probably, 3 segments I'd like to talk about and answer that question. First, when we were developing the technology, we felt it was very, very critical that before we did all of these things that we understood where the EPA was. And so we spent a lot of time in Washington with the EPA talking about the product, talking about what we were doing. I think the first place that they are at is that they are, not only do they administer to the coal plants and the emission control, but as you know, all of the authority that's vested in you comes from the EPA for solid waste as well. So they were well aware of the critical problems towards zero waste and the problems that communities are having and the whole issues of landfills, maybe even more importantly, the emissions that come from landfills. So they, when we first went there, they were very interested in learning about this because it touched on a lot of things that was very important to them. But at the end of the day, what they needed to be able to do was to allow a demonstration through their own rulemaking that would allow a coal plant to actually use this fuel, because there are some statutory regulatory structures that require that anything that starts as solid waste has to be treated under some very rigorous standards. And so there is, as you know, a lot of stuff that comes out of solid waste. So all the recycling that's being done, it all originates in solid waste. So at some point, recyclables go from being a solid waste to being a recyclable. When they're a recyclable, there really are no controls on them. They go to the markets. They're treated differently. But when it's solid waste, as you know, as a solid waste authority, there's a whole vast array of both state and federal requirements. So they had created in their regulatory structure what's called a non-hazardous secondary material rulemaking, which is really the rulemaking that allows them to exempt certain products out of it. And so they elected to want to bring us through that process, which was set up to allow other things like tires and other things which are taken out and come in. And so there's a whole set of criteria that governs that has to do with comparable contamination, sufficiency of processing, and a whole bunch of kind of rigid standards that the EPA wants to make sure that this process is not a sham process, that this really is aimed at recovering. And so we worked with them over a year to submit data, develop protocols with them and related things, such that they could then make a determination that we would be a non-waste fuel. Now that's critical for a Santee Cooper or SCANA, because it allows them to treat this fuel as a replacement fuel for coal. So that means all of their permitting processes and all of their existing processes they can use without changing anything. They don't have to go through a public hearing. They don't have to seek approval. Because what they're really doing is substituting a fuel of a higher quality than the coal that they're already permitted to burn. And so the basic approach to that is that if you're substituting a fuel of a higher quality that has lower emissions than the fuel that you're burning, then you should be able to burn that. And that's what the whole process does. So the first level, in August of 2012, we were granted what's called a non-hazardous secondary material rulemaking, which allowed that if we followed, and I think we gave copies of that letter out, but if we followed a set of procedures associated with doing that, that determination would follow with us wherever we took this product. I think the second thing that's going on, and this is a more recent thing, is that there's a lot of, there's been a lot of regulatory actions against coal plants, but I think that the administration and the EPA particularly is very aware that they really have to find some workable solutions for the coal industry, that shutting them down, even though that some people, if you talk to Santee Cooper, they think the EPA really wants to shut them down. From talking with them, know that they do not, because they recognize that the country can't lose 300,000 megawatts of power. So there is no alternative coal. And so what they're trying desperately to do is find ways to demonstrate how coal could be transformed into a clean coal. And so the EPA, we believe, will be and is very, very interested in this product, because now when we get the test results and are able to submit them to them, they will be able to look at this as not only a solution to zero waste to help communities manage their solid waste, but also a very powerful emission reduction tool for coal power plants, and then as an aid to actually help the coal industry to move down the road to position some of their assets as long-term assets. So that's what the EPA's position is currently.
The status that they gave y'all, or was it a temporary status or just outright?
No, it's a permanent disposition of the request, and it really wasn't like a, in some municipalities you have zoning ordinances and then you get some abilities to have some exceptions. This isn't really an exception. The rules were written precisely to allow people to deal with tires and deal with black liquor and other products that are part of the solid waste. And so this is all part of a very formalized, previously approved regulatory structure that was created to handle circumstances like this.
So you were basically just able to get yours to go through that same process and it worked?
That's right. We didn't build any new ground.
Protect it through that process.
We didn't build any new ground. We didn't get any exceptions. We followed exactly a program that had been created actually 5 years ago, and that's why we were able to get it as quickly as we got it.
And they've also come out with some renewable mandates and some renewable standards that they'd like all these utility companies to get to targeted percentages of generation. And windmills and solar panels and everything are wonderful, but they make up such a small percentage of overall generation that you have to build so much of that stuff. Well, the biogenic carbon or renewable designation for this fuel lets them take a power plant that's already on the books, that's already in current form, burn this fuel in it, and hit pretty much all of these renewable targets in immediate response. I mean, just the amount of electricity generated from 160 or 50,000 tons of fuel versus even a big solar project, there's just no comparison. It's 60 megawatts versus Santee just announced this one a few weeks ago that was 3 megawatts, I think. Is that right? And so you'd produce that much every 10 days.
Are y'all testing to see if it changed the ash and stuff
Yes,
coming
sir.
from? And I'm sure you haven't got any results.
So that was part of that earlier question that there were probably 5 areas that we were very interested in its performance. One would be not only the emissions, but would it produce the kind of emission results. The second area was it fairly controllable within the existing structure of the boiler and so forth. Third was what kind of impact to slagging would it have, because as you know, coal has a lot of slagging. And fourth, what kind of opacity or fly ash impacts would it have? So on every one of those levels, the fuel actually performed better than expected. It turns out that the chemistry of the sorbents that we add actually helps the slagging. So the fusion temperature for the slagging was actually higher, which meant that it was more friable and not as difficult as just the slagging from coal. So they actually had better slagging performance. We had no soot blowers or malperformance or superheater malperformance due to fly ash. And this is with a ESP that is about 45 years old. Kind of, as you know, the Kennedy station is going to be shut down. So they haven't really done much to that ESP. And so we weren't sure it had the capacity to handle it. But even with that old equipment, we were able to do very, very well. So
we had the mills test the fly ash and the bottom ash too. They had samples run specifically for that because they have beneficiated sales businesses in recycling tied to the coal ash. Both Santee, every utility company does, and so you can't disrupt their contractual.
So you don't foresee that having to go to a special landfill?
No, sir, and they're all lining all these. It's not like Granger, right? But the plants that are going to survive, that are upfitted with emission control technology, part of that. They've been fighting it, but they're going to have to line their landfills. I mean, it's big legislation. They don't want active sluice ponds anymore. Y'all know that from Granger here in the community. And so that's the right thing to do anyway, in my opinion. But when they move to these lined landfills, you'll have, and Bob Shepherd, I don't know the terminology for it, but you'll have a landfill that you can put just about anything in it. And they're moving away from the bottom ash businesses anyway. The fly ash, the beneficiated, is a big piece of the ready mix business. But the EPA doesn't have any trouble with it because when you either run it through a cement kiln, you know, it's 2,100 degrees, and so it's either destroyed or you lock it up in a concrete molecule.
But your partnership with SCANA would basically be, they would be responsible for the...
All the ash stays with SCANA, yes, sir. And I manage that for SCANA currently, a company that I have. And so they see no change to the way that their ash programs would operate.
You ought to come to Conway then.
What's it called? Line landfill.
Well, I mean,
Subtitle D, is that?
you're referring to the Subtitle D requirements or whatever,
There you
which
Yeah.
was
I'm
passed.
sorry, I don't know that exactly. That business.
But you got Subtitle D and you got like Subtitle C, which would be for hazardous waste disposal facilities. But Justin's right. I think they're going to go to lining these sites, and but you know that was a concern I had from the beginning is to whether this whole process would change the characteristics of the ash where it would be a problem. But it doesn't appear that that's going to be an issue whatsoever.
Where are you getting your supply from now? How many partners do you have now that you're getting your recyclables from to build this fuel, and what kind of relationships do you have with them? Are they different? Are they all the same?
Well, I mean, I think that we've been in a program where we've been doing, if you will, batch fuel preparation to support these tests. And we're using MSW. It just happens to be that the facility is located just over the border from Vermont, about 10 miles in a Canadian community. But we're using Canadian waste, which is not much different from U.S. waste. But you know, that's only for R&D. I mean, that's not a location that that we would ever build. These units have to be built in the vicinity of the power plant. So if there's a power plant that and a utility who wants to be an off-taker, in this case SCANA or Sandy Cooper, then the material needs to come within 50 to 75 miles of that plant, because what you're actually trying to do is match two really interesting things. As you know, you guys understand this fully well. Waste comes every day. It doesn't stop. You got to deal with it on holidays. You got to deal with it on Saturdays and Sundays and the like. And the community is producing and generating it. That's a really tough problem, and many industries don't have that, but one other industry does, and that's electric utilities. They need to produce power every day. And so they actually need fuel every day. So when you actually think about it, one of the reasons that we chose this intersection was that both of these industries need each other. One needs to have fuel every day, and one needs to take care of their solid waste every day. And so it's actually a perfect marriage, if you will, from a need and supply and demand standpoint. So what we really want to do is lock a community and the utility together, working for the same public, because they represent the same public. And if the utility could end up reducing the amount of coal that they burn, if they could end up reducing the emissions they put in the atmosphere, and you could lower the amount of stuff that you put in the ground and reduce that emission, and if you could raise your number of tons of recyclables, and if you could go to zero waste, then these two bodies, which have historically very, very important roles in our society, because suddenly work together in a way they've never worked together, and one could actually help the other drive to zero waste, while you guys actually help them go to a lower emission and a clean coal platform. So that is really why I think the utilities are extremely excited, and I think that we will be very successful, is because it provides a natural bridge between what should be natural partners.
And we're not we're not converting a single coal plant because we can't come make y'all the promise of recycling, and then when they have tube failure or the power plant's down for maintenance for 60 days, that activity no longer occurs. We're converting clusters of power plants so that if Winya's down, we can take it to Cross. If Cross is down, we can take it. You know, in SCANA's system, it's Cope, Williams Station, and Wateree. Well, Wateree's closest to y'all. You could argue down 17, maybe Charleston, but you're going to have a target plant, and then you're going to have backup because you're not going to be able to inventory. There is nothing negative about the fuel, but it's light. If you touch it and feel it, it's light, and so you can't haul full load, even with we're going to be hauling 19 to 21 tons, and you're not going to be able to store copious amounts. You're not going to be able to store 100,000 tons of that type material like a coal plant's used to storing, and so you're going to have to have a combination of sufficient silos system at manufacturing and at delivery, married to multiple sites, and that's how we're going to be able to keep the promise to your community of recycling and the targets that go forward. You won't ever find in SCANA's system that all 3 coal plants are offline. You'll never find it.
So if Santee Cooper doesn't come on board, distance is not going to be a problem.
No, sir.
Is that right?
We won't.
Earlier.
No, sir.
It's going to cost them more to truck.
It's going to cost us more to find a problem. No, no, we would. You're talking probably $15 more haulage, and we hope Santee Cooper will participate, and we hope SCANA will too.
Which would be ideal.
Right.
It would be ideal to have this waste that falls in their ratepayers and their rate base, and we don't think they're going to. Our reluctance isn't that Santee Cooper isn't going to embrace it. We don't want to go do something. SCANA is going to have a rights to a certain amount of fuel, just to call it how it is. And if I can't imagine SCANA getting to a place where they don't want Santee Cooper to participate, but that's above my pay grade. All I know is SCANA's my partner, and we've made promises to fulfill their need. And in the event that they raise their hand and say they want consumption of their maximum tolerances, well, we got to come up with 4 projects before we can go sell Santee Cooper a pound. We're hoping that's not the case, but the facts be known, they could say we want all 4 projects worth, and if we were fortunate enough that this was one of those projects, then I would be misrepresenting to you if I told you that Santee Cooper's waste, this would go to Santee, because there's a scenario where it might not be able to. But I can promise you it'll go to a utility that generates electricity with it, and I can promise you Santee's our first choice.
And talking about systems going down,
Yes, sir.
pretty clear on if a generating plant goes down. But if we structure a deal,
Yes, sir.
got a plant here, it goes down for some reason, then what happens?
We're going to have force majeure clauses. I mean, we're going to have the same things that we understand your responsibility and dedication to the people in your service area. And so if it goes down, I mean, we saw a facility kind of get stopped while we were watching it operate out on the West Coast. We understand all that, but there's not going to be a major interruption to the municipal solid waste unless there was a strike, I reckon. Or, I mean, lawyers will have to come up with those circumstances.
Well, we know that the big long trucks from Myrtle Beach, the big blue trucks, if it can't get in your plant, then it's going to get someplace. So
Right.
I guess then we got to be ready at all times to continue to run a landfill not only for the 30% that doesn't go through your system, but for 100% if in fact something happens on your side.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I view that we're going to have operating. We're going to have to perform for you guys, both contractually and service wise, and all of those details are part of an operating agreement and shared services that we can start talking about now. We've put a tremendous amount of thought into it, but what we don't want to do is come into Horry County and tell y'all what to do with your garbage. What we want to do, y'all have got jobs, you've got a solid waste authority here, you've got council that has an involvement in this process, and so what we want to do is we have an opportunity to come in here and to help you build a strategy for the future for Horry County, period.
Well-
But y'all are gonna dictate what that looks like.
And I
so,
Yeah, I was just going to say, in terms of performance as well, there's mechanical performance, which, you know, this is conveyors and machines and things that, you know, it's not rocket science, right? These things function, and then there's sort of operational or financial performance on our part, and if for some reason we were unwilling to perform, I mean, we'd have contractual relationships where you could come in and take over and, you know, operate that facility and effectively process the waste, right? So there's a variety of ways, I think, to come together in that partnership, right, to protect you and make sure that you're able to perform the
You
function
know,
you
if
need
a
to
belt
perform.
goes down at our MRF today, we can hold so much on the tipping floor.
Right.
But there ain't no place to hold that other stuff. It's got to
got to go.
Absolutely,
It's got
every
to be
day.
Yes.
covered, it's got to be packed, so,
Every day.
every day.
Yep,
Yes, sir.
we agree.
And Danny, I think we can work through all those operational. I mean,
Think so.
that's blocking and
So
tackling.
that's
right?
something we all got to talk about and understand, what happens.
Yes, sir.
There was a question asked, I think, by one of you gentlemen at the at the plant about seasonality, and I was actually trying to answer that, but I didn't get a chance. But I'd like to try again.
It's bothered him ever since. No.
Yeah, it took over.
Well, the answer that Jim gave was great, and it was appropriate in that they have the ability to adjust their coal flows and what they buy. But the real answer to your question is that these plants could burn up to 30% of engineered fuel. So if we're only targeting, and we'd be hard pressed even to meet 10%. So if your flows shifted up by 10 or 20% on that 10%, 1 or 2 or 3%, it would represent absolutely no problem for the plant to absorb it. So the plant could actually burn more engineered fuel than it's burning. The Williams station, as an example, is a 600 megawatt station, and 10% is more waste than you guys have, even in your seasonally high month. So there really is no problems matching the seasonality between the two agencies.
Well, typically, we go from probably 800 tons a day, and I'm talking to 5, and I'm assuming this operation would have to run 7 days a week.
Yes.
Most time when you get them started, they don't like to be cut off.
Yes, sir.
To as high as almost 2,000 tons a day during the peak of the summer. So it's just about doubles in capacity with the volume during the summer. So you got to pretty much have a facility that would handle your max volume and figure out a way to reduce your cost during the winter.
Right.
So,
Right.
Could you talk a little bit about what you take out of the process, what out of the waste stream you make this material with?
Yep. Sure. So we are using technology that's actually at scale at 300,000 to 400,000 tons today. So what I'm about to tell you is not a theory or a vision, but it's actually, we can actually take you to various places. But basically, all of the solid waste that comes in has to go through some kind of bag breaker kind of equipment that actually fluidizes and opens up the material. And then if the material is larger than 16 inches, it gets shredded down to 16 inches about. Then all of the material goes over what's called a debris roll screen. And the purpose of that is really to drop out all of the small particles, bits and pieces. So think about pens and batteries and buttons and belt buckles and stuff that would go through and fit through a 2 or 3 inch opening. And what you're really trying to do then is fluidize all the rest of fibers and containers, which are the recyclables. So then you've now separated the residue, if you will, and the dirt and grit and so forth from all of the fiber and polymers. And then we take those fibers and polymers and we selectively remove out the high value recyclables. So PET, HDPE, all the aluminum, all the metals, all the glass is taken out, and cardboard are what we view to be high value recyclables, and those then are taken out of that stream. And what's left then is a kind of commingled fiber and polymer stream generally probably about 60% fiber and about 40% polymer. Because polymer is very light, it actually looks like it's more plastic than it's fiber, but that's kind of a optical illusion, so to speak. And then we split that stream, and we end up with our two starting streams, one being fiber with some minor polymer contamination, and one being polymers with some minor fiber contamination. If you guys ever done, which I know you have, when you're separating, you know it's really hard to get some of that fiber and some of that polymer, film plastic and stuff to be separated because they both behave the same with air. We then take those two, size reduce them down to 3/8 inch and 1/4, and then we get that material positioned to go into the advanced biofuel manufacturing facility, where those two materials are then blended, thermally treated, blended with a sorbent, and then reduced in size down to a millimeter size, which is kind of the particle size that's in that part. So what comes out of this process is if you actually tore that apart, you'll see fibers in there, and you'll see polymers are in there, and you'll see that there's sorbents in there. And interesting thing about this, you said this before about molecules. When you get down to the molecule level, the process doesn't care about whether it was a fiber or a polymer. It cares about the carbon and the structure that was there. And so each of those two things. So at the end of the day, we have a very clean fiber polymer stream that gets made into this engineered fuel, and all of the high-value recyclables have been pulled out, and all of the not valuable, difficult to recycle, difficult to manage particle pieces have dropped out through these screens and go out as residue.
Give me your definition of high-value recyclables.
So all
Sure.
all
Worth more than few.
But basically,
yeah.
or that we couldn't use. So aluminum, metal, PET, HDPE, and OCC are what.
I know sometimes in a dirty MRF situation, the plastic or cardboard or paper gets real contaminated.
Right.
You can't get rid of it. So you taking that in this process?
We
That
would.
goes into the fuel.
Yeah, and we can't. I mean, I don't think with solid waste. My experience is that old newspapers are really, really difficult. They absorb water, they get contaminated. They're virtually not acceptable to the recycling industry, and so all of that material and box boards and all this fiber material that can't find a home because it gets contaminated, we love it. Cardboard, which tends to be pretty resilient to absorption of water, and I mean, if you put it outside in the rain, it's going to absorb, but you know, running it through a waste system, it doesn't absorb. That has real value, so we take that as a fiber, as a high-value fiber, even though it's really not quite as high as the value of fuel that we're getting. We think that's a commitment to get cardboard back into the system. Obviously, PET and HDP doesn't care about anything that touches it because it doesn't absorb water, and they're just looking for the value of the polymers on those markets. We want all the metal out because it's hard on the equipment. So not only is it valuable, but you want to get all the metal out. We do not want C&D. We do not want rubble. We do not want wallboard. You guys operating your system, you understand the C&D is a separate. We are willing to take some organic waste up to a limit, but we don't want the haulers to do a restaurant route where they're picking up 35 restaurants and they're coming in with 80% moisture and water and slop. That ought to go either to the landfill or go to an organic anaerobic digestion system. And this is actually kind of an interesting point. The opportunity is that now as we start to pull this apart, you can actually take some of these groups like the organics, and you can actually build now organic processing facilities because they come out in the bottom, the front end screens, debris roll screens. A lot of the organics drop out in that.
A lot of our waste stream, due to the high volume of restaurants we have, a lot of it is what I consider wet waste.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you do get a lot of that, especially during rainy periods.
Right, of course.
Okay.
And the wet waste would be no problem, right?
It's not a problem unless everyone has got their definition of wet waste. If you bring the driver knows what's in the back of his truck. If he opens the back of his truck up and the water pours out of it, that's not something that we want. And we're going to penalize the driver for bringing it to us instead of taking it to the landfill where it belongs. But trace amounts or even daily amounts of water and moisture is not a problem, because we actually need to add moisture back to the process, because when we get done, we end up taking moisture out of the process.
Any other questions from the committee?
Some of the restaurants have asked about the picking up the food waste. I think they're doing it in Charleston, I understand. We're not involved in that.
Yeah.
And as you say, that is not something that we would want to, or you guys would not want to deal with.
Well, the process will allow the organics to fall out, and so if it's the promise of recycling and recovery, if there's not an anaerobic, not to make gas, then you're going to compost it. Either way, you can check the box for your restaurant community that you are recycling and diverting their garbage totals. And so, yes, our process will allow, as Jim said, to isolate. What do you call them? Waste has a specific industry for food and all that stuff. Putrescibles. So,
Mike, there's one, while they wouldn't want to do it, one of the things that BHS has, I believe, is an anaerobic digestion system that you put the wet waste in, you process it, and it turns into methane, and then you make compressed natural gas out of it. So if the county wanted to move towards a zero waste reality and let the county vehicles run off the compressed natural gas, then I think that's something you could certainly look at, and then you'd have a restaurant solution. It'd probably be a big deal ultimately, if you could figure out how it could work economically.
I mean, you're kind of in an interesting situation because you're a tourist industry that you actually generate a lot of organic waste. So you're a market that actually could do this. A lot of communities are trying to do it that don't have the sufficiency of the restaurant waste, but you would.
We have a lot of hotels that'll, you beg them to recycle in the rooms, and they always throw out. Well, we really don't want that, but we want to do restaurant waste. Well, I think that's just a damn cop-out. They don't want to do either one.
Right.
But the tourists demand it more than you'll ever know here. We always getting letters about offering. Anybody above North Carolina has had to do it for years.
Yeah.
But kind of explain to me, we have a tipping fee. We have a landfill. We have a MRF. Of course, we do our yard waste, composting, and we do C&D recycling. We got a short line there that we got 8 pickers on that pick stuff on. What happens to our tipping fee?
Well, first of all, I think that in doing this program, we've recognized that to be successful, we can't come into communities and dramatically change the tipping fees, either short-term or long-term. So what we have done is built a economic model that assumes that we're going to have to live with where you're at for tipping fees, and what your reasonable cost of living increases might be over 10 or 15 years for tipping fees. It's pretty straightforward then from that standpoint, which is that we're not going to be able to impact, and we don't want to impact your tipping fees to your citizens.
Let me sort of give you a rundown of our tipping fees just so you can get a good feel for it. We currently charge $29 a ton. Well, in 1995 we was charging 30 for C&D and 30 for MSW, so we actually have went down since 95. And then about 2004 or 5, we were ready to go down another $2.25 a ton, and the county took that as a host community fee. So that money goes to the county. So of that $29, $2.25 of it goes to the county. And then somewhere between, in the neighborhood of $5, we pay for, out of those tipping fees, our household hazardous waste collection. We pay for a county-wide school. For every school, we go in and teach the fourth graders about the importance of the environment in the school. We do all kinds of different education. We got disaster debris sites in the event there was the storms paid for out of those things. There's a lot of different type programs are paid. What we say is $5, comes around $5. So you got about $7 or so coming out of it, out of that 29 that's going directly to those programs. So that leaves you around a $22 number for MSW. And then you get around C&D, of course, that number falls back into the C&D as well, and we're $26.50 on C&D. So you take the $7 number away from that number as well. So
And those
just trying to give you a feel for what they are.
Sure, and those would be enhanced, I guess, by the recycling revenues that you get off the commodities you sell, right?
All the recycling revenues are going down, which they were like they were 12 months ago.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure.
Price.
But it
Yeah.
helps offset the operation cost.
Right. Got it. And the waste itself, just so we get a sense of the overall breakdown of your tonnage, organics versus office residential. Do you have
We
you know,
have
ballpark
no
on
way
that?
of really telling what
Okay.
that difference is.
Okay.
We weigh it in as solid waste when it comes in.
Okay.
I'm sure we could go back and try to run reports versus a front loader versus a residential, but you're not going to get. It's going to give you a closer number, but it's not going to be
Accurate.
accurate.
Sure.
It won't.
So, because you got multi-public units is done with front loaders and stuff, so
Right.
there's no way to really break it down. All we know is currently we do somewhere around the neighborhood of about 230,000 tons a year in MSW.
Right. So, I mean, I think this goes to the heart of the question that was first asked, which is, what is a partner? A partner's got to be willing to sit down and work through the economics with his partner and figure out a win-win. And so we understand that while this has got powerful advantages and it will create some really big wins in terms of meeting your constituency's needs in terms of sustainability, and I would tell you that a program like this is probably going to be far more powerful to educating kids than the education that you currently do, with all due respect, because the best education is the demonstration of being able to go to zero waste. So there are, I think, some peripheral benefits, but it goes to the heart of the question, which is that we have to sit down as partners and figure out how to make this win-win for everybody. And we understand that $28 or $29 flows a lot of places or some places. And I think what a partner also doesn't want to do is neither one wants to get disadvantaged and felt like they got scooped. So we're just trying to tell you that we recognize that we have to sit down with you. That, in fact, is what we would propose to do, is actually come back and begin to talk about, how do we set this up in a way that would actually work for everybody.
No matter how hard we hold hands, you're going to have part of that tipping fee.
Yep, absolutely.
Is that right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
But you also are spending a lot of money on your landfill, and so the life extension on your landfill factors into those economics as well. If
But
we
we
can,
got to run a landfill.
That's correct.
We got to be ready if you break down.
oh yes, sir.
We got to do C&D. So we're still going to be in the landfill.
Oh yes,
business.
yes, sir. Yes,
So
sir. We hope we can lower
we
your
have found-
cost of.
We found
Operation.
out that takes money also.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Well, and I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
that's what my experience have been in the municipal kind of solid waste business for 30 years, I think Bob can echo this, is that when you actually tear apart the whole budgets, you find things moving all over from all over places, right? So there's subsidies coming in from the county, there's tipping fees, there's just a whole bunch of places. And to your point, Danny, and to Justin's point, if we're avoiding building 300,000 tons of landfill capacity, you will still be operating landfill, but I guarantee you'll be spending a lot less CapEx.
I've used that argument myself with the board on C&D recycling.
Yeah.
So I've been there.
Oh, good. So at least I'm
how'd
not
it work?
far in the wrong room.
Worked so far
Good.
with most board members.
Yeah. Ask him how it's working out for him. So, yeah. And I'd like to clarify something. I said this board can make that decision. We can. This board also knows how we got here. This board also answers to the county council, and more than that, we answer to the citizens of Horry County. So do not misconstrue it. Sometimes it gets done. What I said, the board will make the decision.
Yes.
But it will, there are also other entities involved with it as well.
Of course.
Any other committee members have a question? Staff?
Now, with our operation, you know, I've joked about the guys with the silver briefcases coming down 90, and they're flabbergasted that our tipping fees as low as it is. As much as Charleston is fighting, I wish we had their tipping fee, by all means. But, you know, we have just got to make this thing work out where we can continue to run, and that's what y'all need to do. We got a $12 million MERP sitting up there. We do, I think, a fantastic job with it. We got some plastics up there bailed up. I wish we could make stuff today out of it. Mm-hmm. But we certainly want to look and protect that through making this program work. I mean, it wouldn't be a total, I don't think, hold up, but it'd be a shame not to utilize that thing. And we all know it's tough getting recycling started. And if you ever shut her down, son, you will never get it start back up if something happens with this operation. And most of it's curbside, and it's picking up, and we've encouraged an incentive fee to encourage the national haulers to do more recycling, because we give them a break at the gate on their tipping fee. The more they recycle, the less they pay at the gate. Seems like it's working.
Another, you'd mentioned it before, and I was going to mention it, but recycling is challenged in the country because in order to do a recycling program, as you know, you got to put a separate truck out there, and you got to run a separate route, and you got to burn separate diesels, and you got to put separate trucks down through the neighborhoods. And so there's a real expense to a processing facility, putting carts out and then putting these separate truck routes out. And that's actually has been some of the biggest burdens. And so embedded in this program and embedded in our platform technology is on a typical 300,000 ton processing is 50,000 tons of single stream processing. So we are in a position to actually be able to take all of your, and if you want to continue doing single stream, or if you view that you can save money and not have to roll out those extra trucks, the beauty of this system is that you don't have to now going to have in the hotel room, for example, in the hotel room, there's a separate containers where they partition things up, because all of this is mixed together now, and suddenly it looks and feels differently, but it's highly more efficient in terms of actually recovering recyclables. So I don't know the size of your MRF. I don't know how many tons you actually collect and process, but I would dare say that we'll probably be able to 5 to 8 times the total tons that you're collecting. So when you talk about recycling, if you now have a community that can produce 150,000 tons of recyclables and ship it to the recycling market versus one that's doing it at 25 or 15,000 tons at a higher cost per ton because of the single stream collection and the labor, it's a powerful thing, I think, for the board and the county to think about as we drive to sustainability, because each of these boards and municipalities have an accountability to the citizens to not only do sustainability, but do it the most cost-effective fashion. And this will become the most cost-effective fashion.
And I want to stress that we don't have any preconceived notions on what this partnership looks like. We've got economics that our bankers and our investors are going to want us to be able to run our models at, but that doesn't mean that, we know you have large workforce, very competent workforce. We know you have people here that are already doing the jobs. And so when you say protect, you know, hopefully we can do more than protect your MRF. And we're going to need your sites. We're going to need your permits. We're going to need everything that you already have. So we're not coming down here telling you your business. We want you to understand. We want to sit down. We'll show you the economics, and we're going to, you know, try our best to make it work. I mean, that's what we're here to do. And an expansion of your solid waste authority and the scope of your reach and what you do for your community. That's all in our best interest. You know, we're looking to get in business. That's the message we want y'all to hear.
We've been first a lot of times, and this board has never had a problem being the guinea pig to do it. I mean, we have. I think this board has done a great job, and the directors way before me. So, but we want to continue to move up. We certainly don't want to backslide. Is
Right.
Some of y'all may not know that's what that means from being from other places.
I know what happens when I backslide with my wife.
Yeah.
Is there a team member of y'all's team? Because in my opinion, you've got to understand our system real well, what makes it up, before you can see if it'll even work with your process or how it would work. Either way, is there? Do y'all have one of y'all's team member that collects that data, looks at the systems, does that? I'm assuming it's Bob. So
I feel like I'm competent to do that.
you may be.
Yeah, so yeah, that's gotta get done. And yeah, I think I would embrace and look forward to coming up and spending time with you guys and understanding it completely. I can say that I've had some preconceived notions as to the way I thought things were done up here that I have found from listening that I had it all wrong.
A lot of people fit in those shoes.
Yeah. You know, you got the logistics of moving the trash and the garbage throughout the county. You've got some strategically located transfer stations in the county that are operated by the municipalities. Not sure I really understand exactly how that works. They charge a tipping fee that's higher than the county rate, but y'all charge them, that city, the same $29.
Well, there's two transfer stations, one at North Myrtle Beach, and they only take their waste that they generate.
Okay.
So they don't take outside. So you couldn't go up there as a hauler and dump.
Okay.
So they do their own. It's a 70 model Bob transfer. It's just a Packer's, all it is. I mean, it's just up on a hill.
Right. I've seen it. I saw
Nothing
it
fancy.
in 1980. I saw it.
Same one.
It's the Dempster 7890 compact.
That's it. That's it. They do buy some new trucks.
Well, that's good.
But then you got Myrtle Beach, which is typically basically the same thing, but a little up on a scale a little bit. They have a three-sided building. North Myrtle Beach don't, just an open top. And they will allow people to dump, but it's $48 a ton.
Okay.
But they have very few people that use it. And you know this, when you're talking and traveling an extra 30 minutes to pay an additional $20 a ton, the economics doesn't arrive very, very easily in doing that. So they do get some, but they don't get a lot. And they really don't want a lot. They do about 80, 100 tons a day. North Myrtle Beach is doing probably around 50, 60.
Are those in open-top transfer trailers or compaction trailers?
Compaction trailers. All of them's compaction trailers, which isn't real economic, as you know, but they are all in compaction trailers.
But you don't let any C and D get dumped in. They don't let C and D get dumped. It's all MSW, right?
Yes, sir. But those kind of things that I think somebody's got to know within your group to try to put the pieces, take a puzzle and put it together. And knowing Bob been in the industry for a long time, I
think that would make us feel a lot better, being able to look somebody in the eye and talk. These garbage people kind of talk in tongues at times, and but I think it would help us a lot to be able to know how we came up with the ideas. You may sit on that landfill, and when those trucks come in from Restaurant Road, you're gonna say, "My Lord, have mercy! This is a mess here." But all of them aren't like that. And of course, the county's got 24 convenience centers around the county, which are kind of mini transfer stations. Private contractor hauls those here, and we got a zero tipping fee at the MRF on recyclables. We don't charge anybody to tip there. And I guess the county is probably the biggest recycler in the county. They've do a great job at it. We manage those as a land management company for the county, and that's a millage that unincorporated people pay. So look forward to someone.
So it's my understanding they're going to see the MRF now? Is that?
They're gonna ride and look
Yeah.
whatever they want.
Well, Mr. Chairman, once we adjourn, then I'm just gonna take them and ride them through the landfill and the MRF and real quick on the bus.
Okay. If
Yeah.
they're,
Are you gonna adjourn, or you gonna take recess and come back?
Whatever they wanna do.
You wanna come back here once you finish to just say bye?
Absolutely, yes, sir.
Okay, so we'll just take a break.
you've had your way this long, I ain't gonna try to change it now.
Go ahead, sir.
Okay. We will have an intermission while you tour the MRF and whatever other facilities you'd like to see here.
Okay.
Enjoy.
Got a bus, we'll get in.
Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. We can just leave our briefcase, everything right there, Ken.
Be fine.
Everything here?
Yeah, yeah, it'll be fine.
You heard most of it. We
Yeah.
Campbell, we waiting on you?
Why is it always the same one?
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell.
Thank
for
you, sir.
coming back. We'd like to reconvene the meeting of the Waste Diversions Committee if we could, please. Hope you gentlemen got to see everything you needed to, wanted to. Any questions you didn't get answered, or anything that we can move forward with today?
Yeah, I think that the question I have really is how do we, get back here and actually sit down here and work through some ideas with you and get access to some of your current cost structures, because I think based on what I'm looking at that there's definitely an opportunity here to create a win-win.
Well, I'm assuming, if I understood the first part, that you were going to be the point man
Yep.
for this group.
Who would we work with?
I said that I was competent enough to do it. I don't know if the group would want me to do it or not.
I don't, that's a political arena I don't need to be in. But I'm assuming that you guys will pick one, two, or whatever you want. It'd be cost prohibitive for all y'all to travel.
Right.
Right.
And Mr. Knight and Mr. Bissett have the board has
Empower.
given them the authority to research this, and until your team and those two get together and come down with something concrete that we can,
Yeah.
the rest of the board or this committee first, and then the board can look at, it's kind of where we're at. So I think it would be up to you, however y'all want to decide this, who's going to do what to who, to figure out who's going to meet with them, and we'll go to work.
Okay,
Perfect.
great. Well, we can do that. That'd
Yeah.
be
We're
great.
in federal court Wednesday and Thursday in Richmond.
You could have said we'll be out of town.
Well, I've said that because hopefully we're gonna win again.
Well, we haven't
But-
lost yet.
Yeah, so, after we get back there Friday, from then on, we just as close as the phone.
Good.
Anytime you want to set up meetings, if you give us kind of a head start on what you want to
Yeah.
see, what kind of figures, I mean, we've got everything's public, be no problem.
Yeah.
And,
I think that would be great. I think what we'll try to do is build an agenda list of items that would be helpful for us
That'd be good.
to have access to. We'll get that to you, and then we'll come back and spend a day or two and kind of go through that stuff and
be good.
and try to frame an outline. Still recognizing that the board is gonna be involved, but frame an outline that you two think that makes sense, and that we could maybe come back then sometime and make a presentation to the board.
Sure. I mean, really not that, but you gotta convince them.
Yep.
Right.
Then you come back and it'll come to my committee and then it'll go to the full board.
Yep.
And it's pretty basic, it really is, and it's, as with everything else, it comes down to a matter of, can we face the citizens of Overy County and defend what we do? As long as I can do that, I can vote my conscience and not have any problem.
Yes, sir.
Great.
Okay, we thank you for your time. I think this
Thank
is
you.
exciting, as I've said, especially Danny and I have seen, and I mean literally, a 55-gallon drum with a guy standing there putting one handful at a time in there, up through what y'all have, and a lot of things in between. But this is exciting, and I think we're excited, and I believe I know you will find the solid waste authority to be open and forthcoming. We're not afraid of the bright light of day. We're not afraid of questions.
Yes, sir.
Well, and I think what's kind of reinforcing for me is that you have a heritage of being courageous and doing things that that are not necessarily without some nature to them, right? So
Yeah.
that's really important when you're doing new things, to have that kind of cultural temperament.
It is, and the some of the scar tissue we've accumulated along the time may make your job a little harder, but no, it has. And
Ultimately,
we're
it'll make
proud
all of
that.
our jobs easier if we benefit from your experience.
You got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much.
And we will not set the meeting on Monday, and that way you can visit the store.
Yeah.
You didn't get a chance. to
No, we
see
heard
that.
about the store.
Yeah.
But we didn't.
Yeah.
We couldn't talk the driver into driving over there.
But we
Okay.
look forward.
Thank y'all very much for your
that's
time
good.
and attention. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
If nothing else, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion.
So moved. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it
Thank you.
today.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.